Good evening and welcome to Techdenkers, to the people here and also to the people watching at home, because we have a live stream. My name is Rosalie Dielitsen. I am the program editor here at the Balie and program editor of the series Techdenkers. It's wonderful to see you here tonight and to see you at Techdenkers, because it's a collaboration we have with Agen. And basically what we do is we talk about the impact of technology on our democracy. So especially now, it's, you know, I don't know how to say this, but especially now with current events, I think we can make a program every day about technology and the influence on it on our society, unfortunately. And we've had Meredith Whittaker here, we've had Marietje Schaken here, we've had Ejete Melkran here, and tonight we're here with Arnaud Orain, and we are very honored. Today we're going to look at tech oligarchs, a small group of leaders who wield power that's once reserved for governments. Tech oligarchs like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Ellison do not just own companies, they act as states within a state. They are building powerful blocks that resist democratic regulation by presiding over important infrastructures. Well, according to the French economic historian Arnaud Orain, the global economy is no longer organized around competition. In a world where resources are finite, today's tech oligarchs aim not to compete but to dominate. The behavior of companies like Meta and Oracle is not entirely new. Orain argues in his most recent book, Le Monde Confisqué, Essai sur le capitalisme de la finitude, that this form of what he calls rogue capitalism echoes an earlier model, the state capitalism of the 17th century embodied by the Dutch East India Company. What does this historical parallel tell us about the present? And are we at a turning point in the global economic order, or are we simply returning to an older logic of power, but in a digital form? Tonight, in this edition, we explore these questions with Orain, as well as Maarten Doorman and Helene Mees. So firstly, we will get a presentation from Arnaud Orain, where he discusses the parallels he drew in his book to better understand the power dynamics of today's technological landscape. Together with Maarten Doorman, he will discuss this. After that, Helene Mees will react to Orain's historical perspective and how she looks at this shift in capitalism. And lastly, we will discuss what the role of states are in finitude capitalism and what we can do in the future against the power of tech oligarchs. Tonight, my esteemed colleague Leonard Boy is the moderator of the evening. He is an experienced moderator specializing in societal challenges and transformation processes. He is a co-founder of campaign agency BKB and has worked as a strategic advisor, radio and television presenter, an art intermediary. Additionally, Leonard holds a PhD in art history. A warm welcome.
Rosalie, thank you so much, and a very warm welcome to you here, the audience, but also the people in the live stream who are with us live tonight. And of course, a very warm welcome to our distinguished guest for tonight. Firstly, I will introduce Professor Arnaud Orain, already mentioned about his book. It was translated in Dutch, De Eindigheid van de Wereld. But in more beautiful French, it's called Le Monde Confisqué, Essai sur le capitalisme de la finitude. Orain is an economist and historian specialized in the evolution of capitalism and economic thought, on which he has written multiple books. And since 2023, he is also director of studies at the École des Hautes Études et Sciences Sociales in Paris. And give him a very warm welcome.
Well, thank you very much for this invitation. Thank you, Rosalie, thank you, Leonard. And I would like to thank my publisher here in Amsterdam, Querido Facto, too. So, well, this book, The Confiscated World, is quite a provocative book, and you will see how in a second. I've been trained as an economist, but I'm a strange kind of economist. I'm an economist, I'm an historian of economy and an historian of ideas, of economic ideas. And along those 10 past years, I was struck by how things has changed in our economy, in Europe as well as in the world. And it reminds me my training and my travel for 20 years in the 17th and the 18th century. And I'd like to introduce my book as such with a general notion. The general notion of finitude capitalism, or capitalism of finitude. Some of you are quite acquainted with the notion of mercantilism. Mercantilism was a period from the 16th to the end of the 18th century or the beginning of the 19th century, a world where liberal ideas, liberal economic ideas, were not so important than at the very end of the 18th and the beginning of the 19th century. Mercantilism was a world of monopolies, a world of indies companies, a world of tariffs, a world of competition among countries on the oceans. And you know what? That world is about to come back again and again. And this is my provocative idea. This is the first sentence of the book. Neoliberalism is over. Why? The questioning of free trade, you know what I'm speaking of, and competing mechanism, the return of an autarkic conception of the economy, reshoring, friendshoring, and so on and so forth. The exponential growth of private monopolies that have become company states. We're going to have a long discussion about what a company state here is, but you know what it is. The Dutch know what a company state is with the VOC. The undermining of freedom of the seas, a very important thing. We will discuss this a little bit. Widespread rearmament and an increase in conflicts, and the new race to grab land, minerals, and living species are all phenomena that reflect a shift in global capitalism toward a coherent all that is both new and very old. We are not living in a non-meaning world. What President Trump is doing is not so different than what President Biden has done. I mean, President Trump is for me a symptom, not a cause of our world. Our world changed at least 10 years ago. And we're moving from a neoliberal world toward something else, not due to President Trump's decisions, but due to many others' decisions. So my hypothesis is here that there is a sort of cycle in the history of capitalism between two models. The liberal capitalism, which is the world that we have grown up for most of us, and which ended a few years ago, and which was the world of the mid-19th century, and the finitude capitalism, which was named mercantilism before. So I would like to introduce this time schedule. So here are my two models. The finitude capitalism in a way began with finitude capitalism, with mercantilism, monopolies, tariffs, fighting for markets, fighting in oceans. And then an hegemonic power came on the scene, on stage. It was Britain. After a systemic war against France during the 18th century. And this hegemonic power implemented the first era of liberal capitalism. No more or very few monopolies, decreasing of tariffs, especially between Britain and France after 1860, the Cobden-Chevalier Agreement. The possibility for colonies to trade not just with their mainland, but with other European powers. Freedom of the seas, thanks to the police of the Royal Navy. And this world came to an end at the end of the 19th century through the rise of new systemic powers, and especially Germany. Germany became the nightmare of Britain at the very end of the 19th century. German industry, German ports, German navies with an S. Civil navy and a war navy. And conflicts began between Britain and Germany far before the First World War. Japan, the United States, so many new systemic powers were in competition with Britain, and we were entering in a new world which was not liberal. And one of my heroes in that book is the not so famous, quite famous in Germany, Gustav Schmoller, the economist from the German Historical School. And Gustav Schmoller published a book in 1900 saying, you know what? 20 years ago or 15 years ago, economists were thinking that all the world was entering in free trade and in a liberal era of peace. And he said, before World War I, that it was untrue. The world were entering in a new era of colonialism, monopolies, fighting in the ocean, tariffs, and so on and so forth, especially for France and Germany and a few others. This era, the epitome of this era was, of course, the 1930s, with Nazi Germany, the Lebensraum, this idea of creating colonies in Eastern Europe. But this is not different of what happened at the very end of the 19th century with the new imperialism. What is different is, in the 1930s, the level of violence and horrors. All of this ended with a new systemic fight between Germany and his ally, Japan, and the Anglo-Saxon powers. And a new hegemon appeared. A new hegemonic power appeared on the stage of the world. It is the US. A new hegemonic power on the ocean with the US Navy. A new hegemonic power in currency with the dollar. A new hegemonic power in culture. And then came a new era of liberal capitalism. At first, an organized capitalism, a Keynesian capitalism, if you want. And then, at the very end of the 20th century, neoliberalism, with an hegemonic power, the US, as policeman of the world, and on the other side, something which is completely in agreement with this hegemonic power, China, with low and medium industries and innovation in the US. This world is ending. As in Schmoller ideas in 1900, economists, mainstream economists, when I was a student in the 90s, they were saying, well, we are entering in a new era of peace through liberal ideas, through free trade. Everyone will be able to grow up. Growth of wealth for everyone is possible if you agree with the principle of competition. And now we have two systemic powers. And as Germany, the new nightmare is China. China is the new Germany of the end of the 19th century. And now the US, they do not want to keep the rules of free trade and of the neoliberal order, because they do not want, they are the losers of the rules that they have implemented 30 years ago. And the World Trade Organization, free trade, the supply chains which are spread everywhere in the world. And now they are the losers. And now rules are changing. Monopolies are goods. This is absolutely the reverse in liberal theory. Peter Thiel, we will speak about Peter Thiel, of course. Peter Thiel has published a book in 2014 saying, you know what? Competition is for losers. Monopolies are the future of capitalism. Capitalism and competition are the opposite. So monopolies, tariffs, reshoring, friendshoring, a world which is no more liberal. So this is a definition of what mercantilism, which I would like to extend to other periods, from the 19th from the end of the 19th century to 1945, and from 10 or 15 years. Here is my definition. Finitude capitalism is a vast naval and territorial enterprise of asset monopolization. Land, mines, maritime zone, enslaved people, warehouse, we are speaking sometimes of a capital or warehouse capitalism, submarine cables, satellites, digital data, carried out by nation states and public and private companies, company states, in order to generate rentier income, not profit, which is different from profit. It's outside the principle of competition, which is the principle at the very core of liberalism. Three major characteristics of my finitude capitalisms. There are many others, but I cannot deal with all of those dimensions in that book. It was already too long, a bit too long. So I'm sorry for this to my publishers. There are all those dimensions, and I hope other people will deal with all these characteristics. I have 5 more minutes, 2 more minutes. Okay, you know, those academics. Yeah, I know, always the same. So, the first one, the closure and privatization of the seas, a phenomenon that calls for strong coordination and even blurring of the lines between navies and merchant marines. We will see that again. If you have an hegemonic power on the seas, you can have a liberal era. It's easy to trade from A to B. It's not so easy to trade from A to B when you have two very powerful marines, or when you have many more powerful marines. Second, the relegation to the background or even outright elimination of market mechanism. Free prices, multilateral trade and competition are sidelined in favor of imperial silos. You are trading not with everyone, not with the cheapest. No, not with the cheapest, but with your friends, your vassals, or your colonies, or your neo-colonies for now. So, free trade, multilateral trade and competition are sidelined in favor of imperial silos, monopolies. Monopolies are the future of tech bros. They are saying that we have to avoid competition when it's possible. Cartels, you have to agree with your competitors, and violent coercion. Violent coercion. I don't have to draw a picture. Venezuela, Greenland, and so on and so forth. Here we are. Third, the creation of empires. Empire through the takeover of public and private companies across large areas, both physical and cyber now. Generally endowed with sovereign attributes, these companies set the pace for finitude capital through their warehouse. It could be big transport companies, such as Maersk, Danish, MSC, Italian and Switzerland, CMA-CGM from Marseille, France, or Costco, the public Chinese company, which has been named as a military company by the Biden administration. So it's a transport company, but also a kind of a war company. Supply chains and sheer size. So company states which are both merchant, they buy and sell things, well, sometimes, and they do have sovereign rights. Satellites, submarine cables, public space through X. You can destabilize governments such as Louis XIV, trying to destabilize some countries up north in the 17th century. Through pamphlets and other things. So Mr. Musk can do the same. So he has sovereign powers too. I will not generalize the argument. I'll stop here. Just that table. No. I stop here.
Good.
I put that in front of you. You can have a look to it. Periods here, liberal capitalism, finitude capitalism. My first characteristic,
let's keep it on.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, well, I would like to end that liberal capitalism, this is the utopia. Everyone can grow. Finitude capitalism, this is rather the reverse. The cake cannot grow. If you want to eat more cake, you have to eat a piece of your neighbor. Thank you very much.
Arnaud Orain, please have a seat on the table. And, well, thank you so much for your introduction.
I'm sorry.
No, it's perfectly all right. I mean, you wrote a beautiful and also, I think, very multi-layered book, so we can have a very interesting discussion here on the table. And therefore, I like to invite Maarten Doorman. He is a Dutch philosopher, writer and poet, also professor of cultural history of Germany at the Vrije Universiteit of Amsterdam, editor of literary magazine Hollands Maandblad, has been a critic of philosophy, poetry and history, and recently reviewed Orain's book in NRC Handelsblad. Give him a big hand. Maarten, to start with you, what do you think is the main important message this book brought to you?
Well, maybe my answer is kind of philosophical answer, and that's the relevance of history. And I think that makes it a really great book that I can strongly recommend to the audience. Because the parallel between three periods, two periods from the past and one we are living in now, is quite convincing, I think. And I notice a lot of skepticism to the position that you can learn something from history, because history is always a surprise and people are so skeptical about it. But I think that's too frivolous, that's too light-hearted. We certainly can learn something from the past. And if we want to understand what's going on, and a lot is going on now in this age of tech thinkers, studying the past and giving such a new interpretation like Arnaud Orain does in his book. I think that was for me the first important thing. You know, or many people know that Marx said once in the 18th Brumaire, history is always repeating itself one time. The first time it's a tragedy, the second time it's a farce. But if the second time was a farce, which wasn't in this schedule, then the third one will be really a tragedy. And that's what we have to discuss now, but with that historical background.
Understanding his historical parallels between, for example, the VOC and WC, but also the colonial period, you could say the Dutch have profited very well from those periods.
From the first period.
And the second as well. We had Indonesia.
Well, in the second, I think the Netherlands played a relatively small role as compared to the first one, the time of the VOC, because that in the first place was a period in which Africa was divided among Germany and England and other countries. But certainly the Netherlands had Indonesia, and for the Netherlands that was quite important. Well, what strikes me is the difference between the two periods. So if I may
please
ask a question about that. So the first period, I think we see an end to it. The first period of this finitude capitalism, we see an end to it when people start to criticize the mercantilism in the 18th century. So Adam Smith, of course, is the most famous example. So more or less you can understand that it disappeared for new, that was also the time of the industrialization. But the second time, when finitude capitalism ended, that was only after the Second World War. So that was a catastrophe. And it might be that the catastrophe was necessary to end this kind of capitalism. So my question to you, of course, is what do you expect? Is there a positive possibility to end this kind of periods? Or is it a negative one like a new world war? Or, of course, it's speculation, but you certainly have been thinking about it.
Well, thank you, Martin. Yes. I had that question many times before, because there is something scary, that's right. The two first period of finitude capitalism ended with world wars. The first one during the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, and at the end of the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, an hegemonic power emerged. And it was Britain. And the competition with France came to an end. And France was never able again to be a real competitor to Britain. It became, and there is a very good book from my colleague from Sciences Po, David Todd, The Empire de Velours. There is an English, the first publication.
Well, people can look it up, that's no problem.
Okay, so explaining basically this first liberal world with this hegemonic power, Britain, back with France. France is no more a competitor, it's a kind of friend which Britain is able to work with, in a way. So you were right. There were many streams that put an end to the first period of finitude capitalism. The emergence of liberal ideas, the physiocrats in France, the classical economist Smith, and moreover David Ricardo, with the notion of competitive advantages. The idea that if you specialize in the sector when you are the less
so you, in a way, you say, okay, it maybe firstly ends with war, but after that, new ideas will emerge. New world's ideas can open up society again.
Again, well,
hopefully.
Hopefully,
yeah.
Hopefully, and we do know what kind of ideas can put an end to that cycle from liberal to finitude capitalism and from finitude to liberal capitalism. Because I do not agree with the idea that it would be good to have a new cycle of liberal capitalism. Because what could be the end of the process? I don't know. A new world war between China and the US? In the coming years, I don't think so. Okay. To answer to your question, I think
let's deepen up a little bit more before we start the end of our world, because I think we will come to that definitely. You try to make a comparison between the Dutch East Indian Company, and you say it's less a company and it was more a state. It acts like a state, and you say tech companies today have this same sort of behavior. What are we looking at? What does this behavior tell us?
Well, Mark Zuckerberg, a few years ago, he said that it was Facebook at that time. He said that Facebook is more a government than a company, and I think he's right in many ways. In every period of finitude capitalism, there is a split in sovereignty. Sovereignty is divided between states and company states. It was true during the first period, 17th and 18th century. We had states, the French state, the General Estates here, the English state, and we had company states, the Indies companies, and they were not always aligned with their own sovereign. The VOC and the EIC, they were competing in the Indian Ocean, but sometimes they were doing things that were not, they do not have agreements of their own government to act as they acted in India or in China or in the Indian Ocean. So, and at the very end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, the same thing appeared. We had new company states in order to rule the colonial Africa, with Belgium, the Germans, not so much the French, but the English, the Royal Company of Niger, the companies in South Africa. So those companies were not always aligned with the interest of their own states. And this is pretty much the same now.
Right, so in a way, Maarten, he's saying that we are in a new sort of competition, not market competition, but competition between states and big tech.
Yes, states and companies. Well, that's actually what you are explaining in the book as well. What's so interesting in discussing its history, you see that the VOC was, in a sense, not really representing the Dutch Republic, but the Dutch Republic sometimes suggested that it was more or less the same kind of thing. Well, it was a private company, and this mix of private and public became stronger in the next periods. And now it's playing an immense role. If you see the place of big tech and how Elon Musk sided Trump, and how they use each other, and nobody knows exactly who is
in charge.
Who's in charge there? Well, that's I think an extremely interesting aspect in your theory.
If you want to have a look to Starlink, for instance.
Yeah, because that's interesting. You're talking also about the four elements. You have to dominate the four elements.
Yes.
It's the air, it's the earth, it's water, it's fire, which is war.
Let's speak about air. I mean, as a company state, Starlink, with sovereign rights, Mr. Musk is not always aligned with US interest. Take, for instance, Taiwan. A few months or years ago now, he was very reluctant that the US Army is Starlink in Taiwan because he didn't want to be an enemy, seen as an enemy by China, because he has to sell cars in China. So we have this same, as with the VOC, with Starlink and with Meta, we have this, and with the others, the tech bros, we have the same movement of competition with their own states and alignment with their own states. They have public contracts, for instance. So they are in agreement with many things of their own states. But they are also so powerful now that they can compete with their own states. It's a bit different in China. When tech bros, when Chinese tech bros...
They end up in prison.
Yeah, yes, they are going to holidays.
Right.
For a few months or years. Mm-hmm. So it's more simple. Mm-hmm. So you are, if you are becoming too much in competition with your own states, you're going to vacation.
Yeah. So in a way, you say that the world is confiscated, but do you think that old-fashioned liberalism, capitalism is still there, or is it really already gone?
Oh, it's still there, especially in the European Union. We are still the last neoliberal power in a world which is less and less neoliberal. Mm-hmm. So within our states, we are still neoliberal powers. We are still liberalizing monopolies, for instance, railroads. It began in France. You can put train on railroads which are not the old monopoly, the SNCF, the famous. So we are still neoliberal powers. We are still signing agreement with the Mercosur, with India, and the Chancellor Merz is saying that this is what we should do. We should cut regulations and we should sign trade agreements as before. I think this world is over.
Martin.
If you don't mind, I think it would be interesting to add just one more element to this discussion, and that's the role of the big leaders like Trump and Putin, which is not included in this kind of theory, because in this kind of theory, they are just, let's say, a consequence of what's going on in the world, and Trump could have been someone else, and Arnaud already said that the Biden government was in some respects not that different from the Trump government. At the same moment, there are people who are interpreting it quite differently. So, for example, Patricia Cohen last week in the New York Times wrote about new royalism. That's a theory that some historians have. And they compare Trump and Putin and others, let's say, to Henry VIII or Charles V or Louis XIV. So what do you think are those kind of people who are really families with clans and groups around them, build up sometimes during decades like Putin? Are they relevant for this story, or really only a kind of consequences in a more structuralist interpretation of the world?
It's intertwined. I mean, those people are threatening,
thriving, maybe, or
not threatens, renforcer. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Threatening, no.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
It's perfect. Thank you. Those French. So, the finitude capitalism is fueling those kind of people. I can say this?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
So, they are fueling this kind of capitalism because it's easier to be authoritarian when you are dealing with predatory capitalism. It's easier to be an autocrat. Take Putin, for instance. After the 90s, liberalism was quite implemented in Russia. But with Putin, there is a new wave of remonopolization of the economy.
And I think for this is very important because you say some moment in time the idea arouses there's not enough for everyone. What does that ignite? What does this start that this idea is suddenly so powerful again?
A predation. Predation. Predatory practices. When the liberal ideas are fading out.
So just in between, are you saying that we are sort of taking up the lessons from Russia then? Does it start over there?
Well, lessons, I would not say that. Not lessons. Maybe...
the attitude?
Well, China and Russia, they have an agenda at 20 or 30 years. We, in the West, we have an agenda at 6 months, and in France at 6 weeks. You
can call this agile.
Okay, maybe, yeah. Well, no joke about my president. So they have an agenda at 20 or 30 years, and it's especially the case for China, from raw materials to AI today. And this agenda at 30 years with mines, and then industry, and then marines, and then satellites, and AI, and so on and so forth. Well, we don't have that in the West. But I would not say that it is a model for us, but they were fueling finitude capitalism by the idea that we, as Russian and Chinese, we have to act as
to secure your resources.
Secure resources and secure markets through the Belt and Road Initiative for Chinese, for the Chinese government.
So again, do you think that ignites this sort of development?
For the US, sure.
Yeah.
Because nowadays, I think that President Trump is acting as a person, but it was the same for the Biden administration. They are acting as people who are threatened at times by Chinese, and in a way it's too late. The Western Hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine, in a way it's too late for the US. The Americas, with an S, there are too many Chinese interests. Panama Canal, it is not over. Hutchinson, they have not sold, when I'm speaking now, they have not sold to BlackRock and MSC the ports in the canal. The Chancay port in Peru, which belongs to Costco, which will be a huge problem, a huge issue for the US. Mines in lithium mines, Argentina, Peru, and of course Brazil, with so many Chinese interests. So the US, they have seen that they have a big problem. And this agenda, this 30 years agenda of the Chinese government, now it's fueling the finitude capitalism in the US, because maybe it's too late for them.
Okay. So they just sort of waken up.
Yeah, what struck me in your book is that when you're discussing Costco or this kind of initiatives, and that was what I wrote in my review as well, it's quite an unromantic form of history in the sense that the role of the nation apparently is not that big as most historians think it is. Also, that also goes for the past. And then also you point to our former Prime Minister Balkenende, who was rather proud on the VOC mentality of the Netherlands. So this kind of national heroism is completely besides the point, which we all knew, but now we have good arguments for it as well. But now the point is, do you expect that a kind of nationalism would be possible to come over this new period of finitude capitalism, in the sense of a European nationalism, which is not nationalism in the narrow sense of the word, but let's say a feeling of European identity, like the nation state had in the 19th century? Do you think that might be a way out?
A new area of enlightenment in the European way?
Well, it's complicated. Because, well, maybe you have seen Mario Draghi, Super Mario. Yeah. So that was his nickname.
Yes.
Basically he said, well, European Union has no choice. Now we have to become a federal state. And in many ways, he has right. If we want to survive in this world of predatories, we have to become a predatory power. Well, that's a big issue, because here is the problem. Finitude capitalism is destroying our industry through China. Chinese industry is able to produce everything better and everything cheaper as Germans and Northern Italian and Dutch. I don't speak about French industry. So, first problem, can we have a complete destruction of our industry on one side? And on the other side, we have the tech monopolies from the other part of the Atlantic Ocean. They are monopolizing our data, monopolizing our AI, and so on and so forth. So, those two streams, they are fueling far rights everywhere in Europe. And far rights everywhere in Europe, they do not have the same interests among each others. So they cannot have the same agenda for the European Union. So the European Union, is it possible for this union to become something as an imperialist power and be a predatory such as China and the US? Well, it's going to be horrible for other people in the world. A new colonial era, because we need metals, we need mines, we need raw materials, and we need food. So we need ghost acreage outside the European Union. Just one number. The European Union expects 10% of critical minerals extract from our own soil in 4 years. So we extract less than 10% of our critical materials on our own soil.
Okay, point. Just for the moment, because I think we are now in a great moment in this evening to bring up a new voice to the table, and this will be introduced by Helene Mees herself. I think this is very nice that we have Helene here. She is an economist, opinion writer, and author of different books. She has been teaching at several universities, also in the USA, and she is also a columnist for the Volkskrant. Helene, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Leonard. First, I want to thank the Balie and Rosalie Dielissen for the invitation, and Arnaud Orain for his wonderful introduction to his book. Go read it, because it's wonderful. And I believe that most books should just be articles, and I think most articles should just be blog posts. And most blog posts should just be tweets. But Arnaud Orain's book, De Eindigheid van de Wereld, is the notable exception. When I was reading it, I wished the book would not end. And since I finished reading it, I can't think about current world events anymore in the same way as I did before. The reason that Orain's book is so thought-provoking is that he does not view economics through the prism of less or more government intervention, which translates for mainstream economists into classical economics versus Keynesian economics. Instead, Orain juxtaposes liberal capitalism with capitalism of finitude. Under liberal capitalism, the invisible hand determines the allocation of resources, and free trade promises to deliver wins for all countries involved. Until Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, liberal capitalism even harbored the promise of peace. Economic interdependence would increase the opportunity cost of conflict, or so we thought. Capitalism of finitude, on the other hand, is a zero-sum game, where someone's win is by definition of someone else's loss. To secure resources like critical raw materials, countries resort to imperial, predatory behavior. Case in point is the recent capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro by the United States, which Orain eerily foreshadows in his book. Orain suggests that liberal capitalism eventually breeds capitalism of finitude, citing Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal and Palantir Technology, who regards competition as the enemy of progress. But Orain also cites influential economists like Janet Yellen, Angus Deaton, and Paul Krugman, who have come to doubt the benefits of globalization. These economists often point to China's overcapacity to explain their change of heart. They argue that by subsidizing state-owned enterprises, undervaluing the renminbi, and walling off its own market, China does not honor the principles of free trade. Thus, there is no level playing field and no reason to allow China free access to the US market. While I do not dispute that China does not follow all rules on free trade, but neither does the United States, I don't believe that's the actual reason that the United States abandoned free market capitalism. Even if China had not engaged in mercantilist practices, Chinese companies would still have posed a threat to the United States and Europe. David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage says that free trade will benefit all countries. While some people will gain and others will suffer in the short term, the gains of the winners would be big enough to more than compensate for the losers. But Nobel laureate Paul Samuelson in 2004 already challenged this orthodoxy. Samuelson predicted that trade with China would yield net economic losses for the United States if China would manage to close the innovation gap. Jagdish Bhagwati, who was the cheerleader of globalization at the time, conceded that Samuelson's model was correct, but he disagreed with Samuelson on the realistic aspects of it. China and India would never be able to close the innovation gap with the United States, according to Bhagwati. But here we are. According to the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, China beats the United States in nearly 90% of critical technology. I think that would have surprised even Paul Samuelson if he had lived to see it. The transition from liberal capitalism to capitalism of finitude, or from neoliberalism to predatory capitalism, happened because China threatens US hegemony and Western living standards. The irony is that former colonial powers like Spain now serve as the hidden acres of China, like the colonies before served as our hidden acres. The United States still dominates China in the fields of big tech, including the design of semiconductors, AI research, software platforms, operating systems, and cloud computing at scale. That's no coincidence, but the result of billions of US government dollars channeled through DARPA, an agency that aims to develop radically new technology for the US military. Silicon Valley also benefited from light antitrust enforcement. A lower court's decision in the early 2000s that ordered the breakup of Microsoft was overturned on appeal and settled out of court by the Bush administration. Google's Eric Schmidt helped Barack Obama to win his re-election. Within weeks of that 2012 vote, the Federal Trade Commission suddenly dropped a major antitrust investigation into Google. It explains why American tech companies have become so big and powerful. Whereas Donald Trump had the support of only one tech billionaire during his first election campaign in 2016, virtually all Silicon Valley executives threw their weight behind Trump during the 2024 elections. Why? Because Biden was on a mission to cut big tech to size, especially Amazon. We know all what happened next. During Donald Trump's second inauguration, America's tech tycoons had front row seats. The man of their choosing, J.D. Vance, was inaugurated as vice president. Within days, Elon Musk was given free rein to wield a chainsaw to bureaucracy. But when Trump and Musk had a very public falling out, Trump even threatened Musk with deportation, it was the world's richest man who had to cave in. The triumph of politics over money should not come as a surprise. As Mao already observed, power flows from the barrel of the gun. Control of the organs of the state, the army, state prosecutors, tax authorities, still ultimately counts for more than billions in the bank. No wonder that the tech oligarchs dream of founding their own state. But the tech oligarchs better heed the lesson of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. The VOC, which started out as a private company, had gradually become a territorial power, only to discover that maintaining armies and fleet was very expensive. The wars in Asia drained the resources of the VOC and contributed in no small part to its dissolution. And now I revert back to you, Leonard.
Helene, thank you so much. Give her a big hand. Well, we used to say, we wish you a lot of personnel. Now you can say, we wish you a lot of land to take care for. And then you say, we can take a lesson from VOC because that's not so easy.
It's having your own territory and you have to defend it. That's going to be a very hard thing to do. The only reason that the big tech oligarchs can now operate the way they do is because they have the protection of the US government. And you see it doesn't matter much which president, because Barack Obama, who is probably the one we think most favorable of, also kind of needed big tech to help him win the election.
So you say as long as state and big tech is aligned in their interests, this will continue. When will be the fallout? When are the lines separated?
I would think, because when I was writing it, I was like, did Joe Biden lose the 2024 election because Elon Musk helped Donald Trump organizing, or did he lose the election because it was people really angry about inflation and immigration? Because I think the moment that we are where really big tech, the help of big tech determines who is going to win the election, that's the end of the state as we know it, and then big tech has effectively co-opted the state, and then it has the military protection, and it doesn't have to be anxious anymore about conquering territory because they also have the military to protect it.
Because I know that's also what you sort of predict, right, in your book, that we are now almost into a sort of 2.0 state of this sort of new well, this sort of new area. That you say it's not completely historically the same, because big tech can make it into a next phase, into a 2.0 edition.
Well, there are two things here. With big tech, there is a difference, of course, between big tech and the old companies, states, from the 17th century or from the beginning of the 19th century, because they are dealing with a cyber space, and because they are dealing with a new element, which is air, which is atmosphere, and which is maybe other planets at some point. But the whole idea is pretty much the same. They want to colonize spaces. They want to colonize cyberspaces and maybe extra Earth spaces, and also Earth spaces. We have some projects, such as the project Praxis, for instance, supported by Peter Thiel, which is a sort of a private state backed by cryptocurrencies, which could be implemented in Greenland, for instance. So they have projection of private states in real soils, in real places, which could be outside of the sovereignty of any normal state, I would say. So this is the first thing. They are moving toward real lands, and this is a big issue. The second one, in the materiality of all these big tech. Because big tech, it is not about data. It is not about the internet. It is about earthly materials. For that data centers, you need energy, you need water, a lot of water. You need a lot of energy. What kind of energy? Is it oil? Is it uranium? Is it electric? Other sources? So this is about materiality. So those big tech, they are pushing for a new colonial era because they want to implement their ideas in lands, in real lands, and because they need lands, because they need resources, real resources. AI is about materiality. It's not about computers.
Okay. I think we've learned so far that we are in a state of war, in a way, between states and big tech or big new companies trying to acclaim as much of resources, as you said, in a way very old-fashioned, within the idea there's not enough for everyone. We need to be there at first. We need to be the owner of it first. We need the warehouse full of it. This is far beyond the sort of liberal economy we have been living in over the last 40, 50 years, Maarten. Maybe all by all, it was just an abbreviation. It was just maybe a small, how you say, small fling in history. This is the basis of humankind.
Yes, I think, or that's what I also like in your book, is that the periods of, let's say, liberalism or capitalism, capitalism including democracy or freedom or kind of societal transparency and so on, those were relatively short periods. And the basic
short-lived
situation is a Thomas Hobbes-like world in which everybody fights to everyone else, bellum omnium contra omnes, as he puts it. But speculating in the line of your book, you might imagine that a new era arrives in which there is a new hegemon, as you call it in the book, and that will be China. And you're quite skeptical, I know, and you know much more about China than I do. But might that be possible to guarantee a kind of pax, or how do we say that in Latin? Pax
Sinica.
Pax Sinica after the Pax Britannica in the 19th century and the Pax Americana after the Second World War.
Yeah, but for us,
might that be imaginable?
The United States was always our consumer of last resort. So we could always, and especially the Germans, could produce cars and everything and sell it to the United States. But we cannot now swap the United States for China because China is the producer of last resort. So China is not going to buy anything of us. China is going to destroy our industry.
But
it's already happening at this moment.
But eventually it's about military power. Military power goes back to economic power. You have shown in your book that China is already everywhere in the world, on every sea, and developing this, what is it, belt, the Silk Road and so on.
Marta is trying to find a way out.
Yes, sure.
I know.
I think we will have that responsibility, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's
for sure.
Why we are here.
That's right. The two Chinese Marines are growing up. The merchant marine, the Chinese merchant marine is enormous, and the shipyards, the Chinese shipyards, they can build about from 50 to 60% of the fleet of the world. It's a 0.1 something in the US, so it's nothing. And the US, they do not have a real merchant fleet. So this is a first big issue if you have a world war, to not have a big merchant marine. And the Chinese war marine is growing up enormously. I've spoken with a French admiral a few months ago, and basically he said that the Chinese military marine is building every 2 or 3 years the same amount of tonnage of the French marine, of the whole French marine, which is the first one in the European Union. So it's enormous. So they are building carriers.
China also produces drones that in one day that America produces in a whole year.
Okay, this is all very nice. But let's try to predict a little bit of a positive strategy.
To answer to Martin.
What is Europeans' future in regards to all these enormous developments?
I do not believe in a World War III between China and the US in the coming years. The most likely scenario here is two imperial silos. Two imperial, and this is the US strategy. How we can bound the Chinese interest in our own hemisphere. Is it still possible? They will try it. They will reinforce their strategy in the Western Hemisphere. And the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, they are dealing with recreating their hinterland and recreating the Indo-Pacific as their own property, which is very difficult because you have Japan and Australia for the Chinese, and you have Brazil and Peru and Argentina for the US.
And Helene, is it then realistic to say Europe is able to build up its third silo with their own initiatives in relation to tech, in relation to resources, and so on?
Not the way things are going now. It's unite or perish. So I would like to propose that Mark Carney is going to be the president of the all European Union countries, and which are done federalized, and then Macron can go to Canada. He already speaks the language, so.
Okay, but seriously, you're saying we're not there yet. Do we need to regroup? Do we need to choose side?
No, I don't think we should choose sides between the United States and China. We should not switch to China because China is going to eat us alive. I'm not sure what you saw, but yesterday or 2 days ago, a fierce critic of all Hong Kong political situation, he was sentenced to 20 years to prison. I don't think we want to have a system like that. So we should try to be strong as Europe, have allies like Canada, and in a way, and I understand that at this moment of time it's difficult to think, but maybe hope that the United States is coming to their senses or its senses, and see whether we can, still skulk.
Arnaud, you have studied.
I don't think it's a permanent solution, but otherwise we should just try to be a silo ourselves.
Okay. You have studied the history, we have learned through your book, of the economic developments over the last, 400 years. Did you find any sort of way out which we now can use as Europe to become the third silo, or to become, let's say, the sort of junior ally, or maybe just to be, again, the very innovative area where things can come anew?
If we want to put an end to that cycle of liberal and finitude capitalisms, I think we have to degrow. I think we have to implement real, strong, powerful ecological policies in the European Union. We have to decarbonize our economy, but in order to decarbonize our economy, we need minerals, we need mines, and this is a big issue. Do we have to mine in Europe? Do we have to mine elsewhere? It's going to be destructive for environments in our soil and the soil of our fellow human beings outside in other continents. But we have to decarbonize, but at the same time, we have to degrow our consumption and production on many, many sides. Because we will not be dependent of the other predators with their fuel or their critical minerals, and we will be able to live in our democratic values with less. So this is the end of abundance, and we have to build up on ecological ideas, our relationship to non-humans. The relationship of humans to non-humans, it is changing. We are giving rights to animals. We are very sensitive to the suffering of animals. We are giving rights to forests, to rivers. And now we have to go into it to change our relationship with nature. Nature does not exist. There is no nature. We belong to something which is
what is the role of tech, in your opinion, towards this new green island of Europe?
Well, it's impossible to have AI and the protection of the planet, because AI is a monster which will devour, I can say that?
It will eat us all.
Eat us all. I mean, forests and all resources. So it's too much energy.
Maarten, we need to go green, or we need to be...
Well, we certainly need to go green because European autonomy is at stake. And so I completely agree with you. It's a very hard thing to speculate about the future. It's so complex. So I'm not quite sure if a green revolution includes the needs of raw materials in that scale, because technology is developing as well. But I'm not an expert in this field, so I really don't know.
Is this the way out? A green Europe, not leaning onto AI, no abundance?
The degrowth sounds nice, but on the other hand, during the global financial crisis, we saw also the fallout, and a lot of people suffered from it. So I would rather have a higher quality growth, so that we stop buying all junk from from China, and that we have high quality products like we used to have before, in a way, because it was not, if you bought a pair of scissors, then you used them for 20 years, and now you just buy scissors for like €1 and for one time, indeed, and you throw everything away. So I would, even if you have Arnaud paints a picture of not having any more SUVs anymore, electric SUVs, but much smaller cars. But those can be beautiful. That can be Porsches. I can imagine that we. So it's more like I don't like the concept of degrowth so much, because it has all kind of negative effects, macroeconomically speaking. But I like the idea of high quality growth, circularity, and indeed keeping our values and not throwing ourselves in the hands of Xi Jinping.
And you are not afraid that those tech bros in that time, in let's say 5 to 10 years, are just simply able to buy Europe as a nice place to stay?
Well, they are already doing it in many ways. So, well, maybe, but the question is about degrowth is thinking with an agenda at 30 years. And the question should not be, do we need electric cars, but do we need cars? This is a question as us, as Democrats in the European Union. The real good question is, who needs cars and for what? And this is the same for everything. So some people need cars, okay, but all of us, I don't think so. So electrification, it's a good thing. We need electrification because of global warming, but the question that should be at the agenda of all countries of the European Union in every election is, what do we need? What do we really need? And if we can ask that question at every election, what do we really need, and what's gonna happen if we want electric cars? What's gonna happen to insect, to other animal, to other species? What's gonna happen to our environment? This is the real political question of the next 10 years.
Maarten, what do you think about this position? Because in the meantime, China steams up. America will continue to produce their oil-fueled energy. So,
well, therefore, I was speculating a bit about a third period in which China would be the first. But going back to your suggestion that it might be that in 10 years others are going to buy Europe, I think it's good to realize that Europe is a very strong continent as well, and that sometimes we are thinking about Europe in such a negative manner, following the frame of the American foreign policy of today. I think that's the wrong way, and that's the point that Caroline de Gruyter, who's writing excellent comments in NSA, but also wrote the introduction to your book. I think she makes a very good point sometimes to repeat this, that Europe is not a lost cause, it's not just history.
Good. I think that's a great moment to open up for questions. Thank you very much for yes, please, for this conversation. Rosalie, you have a mic for people who can deepen up this discussion, who maybe can elaborate, but please ask a question or add something, otherwise we skip it.
Thank you for a wonderful discussion, very interesting. I just wanted to follow up on Maarten's last comment. So what do you think makes Europe strong in regards to the US and to China? Why are we not a weak continent, and what makes us strong as well?
Well, I'm not an economist, but as far as I can see, the European, but that's your fields and yours. The European economy is rather strong. There's a lot of innovation. There's a long tradition. There's a real change in Europe concerning the place of Europe in the world, etc. So I'm a pessimist in all fields, and after an evening like this, I'm not going home in a very optimistic manner. But concerning Europe, I think we do not have to be too nihilistic.
Helene?
Well, I worked for the European Commission. It was back in 1998. So, and things that I was working on were only like implemented when I was working on at my time in Brussels, were only implemented like 15 or 20 years later. That's how much time Europe takes to do anything. So Caroline had lately had also a column in which she said, oh, but we had such the summit, it was such a great outcome for Ukraine because now they're gonna have, gonna lend together, borrow money together in the market. And I was like, oh, and she said, that would not have been possible 15 years ago. And I was like, do you know how much the United States changed, how much China changed during those 15 years, how much progress they made? And we only made the tiny progress from, oh, we don't want to do common borrowing of funds. To the decision, oh, we do it. Even now, the Dutch Ministry of the Dutch Treasury Secretary says, like, the only reason we allowed it is because Ukraine borrows the money from us and we don't give it to Ukraine. It's no progress. You know, it's like it's a big step for the European Union, but it's in the meantime, other countries haven't sit still. So
you have your 4 elements, but maybe we forgot time.
No, history makes us strong. Because we were, and in many ways France is, colonial powers. We were colonial powers, and we are still. Kanaki, Nouvelle-Calédonie, for instance, we are still colonial powers. This is the same for Denmark and Greenland. So we know that we cannot be, I hope that we know that we cannot be imperialistic powers again, because it's going to destroy people, it's going to destroy ecological environment overseas. So it makes us, our history makes us maybe a little stronger than others which were not really colonialist. And our ecological ideas, our ecological education, our relationship, as I said before, with non-humans. We are changing as Europeans, dealing with the non-humans. And we can make relationships between people from other parts of the world who are still involved with their environment.
Okay. There's one thing I think we haven't discussed, and that's the role of investment money. I think almost everyone here has the possibility to put money aside for funds on the stock market, or is funding for the pension, is paying for pensions. Who is aware of his or her power to make decisions on a daily basis where to put that money? Because then we're also coming at your agenda. And that's the power of the individual collective money. If we look, for example, at the Netherlands in the pensions, it's huge. It's an enormous amount of power money you can put on a certain decision. Are people aware of that you can make that sort of decision?
Well, yeah, that's so. There's a lot of people said like, oh, Europe can use has power against the United States because we have put so much money in US Treasury bonds, and if we stop buying them, then the pain will be felt in the United States. The problem will also be that the pain will be felt in Europe as well, probably a fallout more than we had during the global financial crisis, the crisis in the Eurozone. But I also wanted to say, like, it's not centralized power. It's not that the Dutch government can direct the pension fund to withdraw funds from the United States. And maybe it may be politically a good idea to bet against America, but I think in an economic way, it's not a good idea again to bet against the United States.
Yeah, but your point also is that we have some influence, as little as it is, and that's what I tell my kids, that every euro you spend has consequences. Start to think about it. That's already one step.
Okay. Another question.
Yeah, just following on this, I think these four gentlemen there on that poster, collectively and individually have so much wealth. We just read that Elon Musk his value is about 850 billion today, which concentrates that power in one individual, and that is very different from a pension fund. So how do you... We haven't actually discussed the amount of wealth that you can use to create companies like SpaceX, like he did, and etc. Has that been ever seen in history before, that so much wealth was with so few people?
So much power, you mean, not wealth, but power. Yeah.
Yeah, wealth, power concentrated in one person's hand. Did you find parallels historically?
Well, some of the merchants of the VOC were very, very powerful in the 17th century. And at the very end of the 17th century and the very beginning of the 18th century in France, we have financiers that were not powerful as the king, but they, for instance, Louisiana, which was a giant territory from the Great Lake to the mouth of the Mississippi River, they belonged to Antoine Crozat, which was a financier at the very end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century. He was a very, very powerful and wealthy man. So he was not competing with the French state, but he has assets which was sovereign assets, such as a giant territory, an enormous amount of wealth. And he was able to put his interest within the state. So, yes, it happened in history.
With all kinds of respects. I mean, when you compare this with, let's say, the merchant trip in Amsterdam in the 17th century, or the Rockefellers in the United States, this is far beyond, I think. This is worldwide power.
The Gilded Age of the end of the 19th century, Rockefeller and the others, they were also inside the states. The United federal state. So they were so powerful, so wealthy, those robbery barons. I was looking for their nickname. Those robbery barons, Rockefeller and the others, they were pretty much the same. We are speaking now of a second Gilded Age in America. So the first one was this mix of those so wealthy people that...
And Arnaud, this maybe brings us to another solution. At the time, those robber barons were confiscated. They were nationalized. Their properties were taken back to the state.
And there was just antitrust.
It was, well, the antitrust era began at that time, but the result was not the nationalization of all these wealth. And now the antitrust is quite nothing. The FTC, as Elena said, has no agenda anymore.
Alina can't try to do
we take another question over
then
there.
Biden was voted out.
And now?
Okay, a question. Rosalie, tell us, yeah.
Hi, this is a message for Arnold and for Helene. Do you believe that the economies in the countries that actually have the raw materials, talking of tech, just going back to tech for a second, do you believe that the countries and the economies that actually have the raw materials that these tech companies need are in a stronger position in the next, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years, coupling with the fact that they actually have higher fertility rates, lower mortality rates as well, and they're actually, that stands in good stead to be more competitive and a lot more innovative. Where do you see that in the next 20, 30, maybe 40 years as well? Just aside from, the Western world, which you talked about, the EU and US, and of course, China.
Excellent question, Arnaud.
Well, they need energy. So what kind of energy? Remember what a vertical integration is, from the mine to the product. So they began to implement project with nuclear power. In Texas, for instance. We don't know if they will be able to implement those projects of a nuclear plant in order to fuel their data centers. But this is the first thing. And so you need uranium, or you need old style energy, such as...
The question is, will those countries who have those,
yes,
will they benefit?
Yes. Will they benefit?
And can they be, in that case, be more independent, more strong?
I don't think so. It was the second wave of my answer. So where does this energy is coming from? From other countries. So, can they sell this energy on a market? This is the question. It was the case in a neoliberal era. There were a market for oil, for uranium, for other sources of energy and raw materials and critical minerals. But in a world where you have systemic competitors, market is not the good way to get raw material. It's predation. It's monopolies. And those countries, I don't think that they would that they will be able to take advantage of their resources, because those predatories, they want to secure this vertical integration. And you cannot do that through market.
Dixit, Venezuela.
Thank you all. I have a question for Arnaud. What explains the 65-year alternation between your two models? And can we thus expect to remain in the current finite capitalism for the coming 50 years? Or are we able to shorten it?
You mean that there is the same amount of decade between the... Okay. I had that question before. You remember Schumpeter's cycles? They are based on long cycles of innovation and destruction. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if we can put a parallel on my cycle and not business cycles, but prices cycles, and long cycles and Schumpeterian cycles. But a colleague from Bordeaux University would like to try it. So in a few months, I hope I will be able to answer to your question.
Okay, we will have a second meeting then to check this out.
Thank you.
Another question, yes?
Hi, my question is quite simple. How can degrowth in Europe position us so we are competitive for the external world? If we look at sectors like the petrochemie, chemie, or the strategic importance of the port of Rotterdam or Antwerp-Bruges, which have seen a dilution in their relevance in Europe, how can, if we give rights to insects, as you said, which is all nice and well, but being the only player that's ideological in a world of pragmatics, how can we remain relevant without being just crashed over by everyone else?
I suddenly realized this small Gallic village, which was there in the Roman Empire.
Well, I'm not sure it is pragmatic to continue on our path. That's the point. I'm not sure it is pragmatic to continue to have dozens and dozens of ships in the port of Rotterdam. Maybe it's an illusion. It's an illusion for a few years, a few decades maybe, and that illusion will become to an end. Maybe not for us, but for our kids. So to be pragmatic, in my opinion, is not to continue to have those dozen of ships in Le Havre, in Rotterdam, and in Hamburg. We have to do something else, and we have to deal with the economy in another way. It could not be tomorrow, because we have workers in Le Havre, in Rotterdam, and in Hamburg, and we have to deal with those workers. Mm-hmm. We do not want a large unemployment, because we know how large unemployment will lead us, as usual. But we can plan, and we need planning. We need planning in order to degrowth in some sectors.
A long-term strategy, Helene. Again, as you point out, maybe Europe is slow in legislation, but there should be a longer-term strategy to, in the end, keep up with this sort of developments.
Yeah, well, I think the vision that Arnaud presents is very appealing. But will it be enough? Will it be enough? Will we not be exploited by either China or the United States? I think it will be very difficult, but in that sense, we are comparable to Canada, which is actually in an even much worse position right now. But I think at least we should try something. And I kind of agree with Arnaud that we should not just try to copy the United States, because we're way too late in the game. And it's also maybe not the world that you want to see, where we actually are run by tech barons like Elon Musk.
Any optimistic thought?
No, we're living in a tough world, and I think, unfortunately, the pessimist is always right, but still then I think it's important what Karl Popper said. As a political philosopher, optimism is a moral duty.
Okay.
So even if it's hopeless, you cannot just say, let's stop and kill ourselves.
Okay.
You can say it, you can do it.
One last remark or question over there.
Yes, hi, thank you. Well, I was wondering if you compare the VOC as a company land with the tech pros as a company land. I think there's one big difference between those two, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on the influence of that, and that's on the public opinion via their platforms. What do you think? Would it, for example, enable them to maintain their power for a longer period of time, or what do you think what kind of effect this has on the development of time?
In regards to popularity, you mean?
Well, I have platforms to spread ideas, which are widely spread nowadays, which was not able...
There is not so much difference as you can imagine. For instance, the French Compagnie des Indes, in the 1720s, it was a state within a state, and they were able to spread ideas too. With pamphlets, with newspapers, in order to say basically, you know what? Monopolies are better than competition. And you can find this, not in Peter Thiel's book, but in French newspapers in 1720, explaining, well, the French company designed, it is far better than competitors in French ports, and we will explain you why. So they were spreading their ideas, they were spreading their vision of the world to the French public, to a French audience. So, well, this is not so different. But now, they cannot just speak to the French audience and the French subjects, but to everyone, everywhere. And we are in a world where those ideas are spreading out, and they are probably less, in a way, counterpowers in the public sphere than not in the 1720s, but in the 20th century. And those ideas are spreading, and we don't have the pharmacon to put them away, I would say.
Okay,
but it's not so different.
Well, I think I can end positively tonight. I just try, all right? First of all, thank you so much for elaborating on your book and on the fact that you have brought in this historical insight of developments, which can be so threatening and so, how you say, so enormous on this very moment. But in a way, I think if you go to yourself as a human being, and I have to go back to Spinoza, telling us all that we are all part of a bigger thing, that we are nature, that we are nature. We want good persons. Yes. And whatever the Instagrams of those worlds are telling us, we have this soul, we have this inner world. So I trust us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.